In our series of stories regarding migrant landings, we've shown you various agencies who have been at the helm of rescuing migrants, repatriating them, or providing humanitarian services. Reporter Sophia Hernandez and photojournalist Ismael Lewis spent a day with Miami's Coast Guard earlier this month. They're showing us how the Coast Guard is assisting by air the hundreds of migrants they encounter on a monthly basis and how things have changed in just a few months' time.
We have arrived. The time is 10:30 at the Opelika Air Station for the Coast Guard. We are going to be meeting with some of the crew members now to be able to get on the plane.
2 challenge rule, about 1,000 feet, 1 challenge rule. Below that, anything extraneous to strap controls if you already have them.
These 6 crew members with Miami's Coast Guard Station are preparing for their Friday flight. It will be one of a handful they will each partake in this month.
I need civilian GPS on the right side.
After speaking with headquarters and partner agencies, they evaluate their route and make sure it's a plan that brings a good search. And then it's time to board this Ocean Sentry plane.
Our flight's supposed to be about 6 hours, 5 hours more or less, overlooking the Florida Straits.
And prepare for takeoff.
They're turning, you're clear. They're clear.
A bumpy ride towards the Florida Straits, and we find ourselves with co-pilot Lieutenant Connor Hull.
Sometimes their vessels are not seaworthy. They might have broken down, and they're in some sort of situation where they need assistance. So we're here.
In the air, this crew of 6 each has an important role to play.
See, you guys are having some kind of radars up here. There's 2 guys in the back looking at different technology. Tell me kind of what you guys are looking at.
Up front, we're flying in the area that needs to be flown using our flight maps and other instruments. And they're the ones that are actively pinging radar targets, putting the camera on to see who it is and whether they need assistance.
Lieutenant Hull has been with this branch of the agency for a year and says during months of increased migrant sightings, the additional burden didn't come from their routine trips.
It was the non-scheduled flights where a Good Samaritan sees one of these ventures, calls it into the Coast Guard, and our 24/7 crew is flying on them. So that's where we've really seen the uptick.
Since the start of January, the federal government has reported about a 90% decrease in the number of crossings from Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans at the southern border, claiming President Joe Biden's parole program as the deterrent. But in the open waters of the Atlantic, the crews that are the first eyes are seeing a different picture.
While we have seen that there is a bit of a decrease, it's hard to gauge because there was a resurgence. So I don't know that we can directly correlate that to the recent legislation that's been passed, but can definitely concur that, we have seen a little bit of a drop-off as of recent.
The operations are at such a high tempo constantly, like the relief isn't very much felt up front yet. But we do appreciate the measures that are being taken.
Friday was no different. Miles offshore the Florida Straits and in the middle of the Atlantic, boat upon boat was being found by technology special to the Coast Guard. The crew circles the vessel, determines if those on board are in distress, then communicates with other agencies to see how they will help. In a day, they average 3 to 4 sightings relating to migrants.
What is different maybe from when you first started versus now, what you're seeing?
The numbers are, I think, if you compare last year's to this year's, the numbers have grown significantly. But in terms of the voyages themselves and the condition that these people are in, very much the same.
And we saw it firsthand, this picture of 21 migrants stranded for 8 days without food or water.
We're about 2 hours into the flight with this Coast Guard. We're about 90 miles off the shore of Miami near K-Town. You can see that we've already seen a group of migrants. The pilots right now are working to kind of survey where this group is exactly, pinpoint their location, see if they're in need, and survey the area.
Circling the Bahama Banks, we find more boats and more signs of landings.
I would definitely say I do see a lot more people on islands rather than the boats. I don't know the reason for that, but definitely the vast majority have been on islands.
Mission system operators like Raul Tavares are tasked with pinpointing exact locations, inputting them into databases, figuring out next step solutions for rescues.
We just wait on the response from our headquarters, and depending on the ETA for a rescue plan, from there we decide as a crew if we're going to drop our resources to them, or if the ETA is soon, we do not have to drop to them.
This plane has 3 options to assist groups they stumble upon. These bags with 2 rafts and a survival kit, this kit with a water pump for sinking vessels, and what's called ADSCAN, filled with water, food, blankets.
And how do you know when to drop these kits at the proper time? How do you know when to drop them?
So it depends on the situation. So let's say like what we have now, we have about 15 to 20 people. They've probably been there for about a couple of days. So we would drop the ads can, because that has the water and the food that would help them get to the next day.
After circling the area for an hour to find other areas of distress, the plane drops off a saving grace. Then connects with those on land via radio.
Reach out to them over and over again until we get a hold of them. 9 times out of 10 we do, and then we ask them critical questions like how many people. That's the most important. So when we rescue them, we can have the same number of people.
This group was picked up by a Coast Guard cutter from Tampa, thanks to this small plane's intel. In the coming days, these migrants will be transferred to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Petty Officer Ryan Estrada says it's work they couldn't do without the help of others.
The more people see it, they think there's more of it, but that may not necessarily be the case. It's just, before it was easy to miss. And now with all the assets and all these partners and everybody being engaged, everybody's, essentially on the same page right now. It makes it that much easier for us to find them.
After circling the skies for another 4 hours, being routed to different areas to provide visuals, the crew finally ends their humanitarian services for the day, knowing their work is essential in saving lives.
We're going out and assisting people who need help. And down here, a lot of the times it is a migrant venture in a very desperate situation, making a very treacherous journey.
Ready to take off to help those on the dangerous journey to freedom. Sophia Hernandez, Florida 24 Network.